All sales are final. My college advisor said internships were supposed to build character. Mine mostly built an allergy to clay dust and a deep suspicion of elderly women who wore sunglasses indoors. I was 24, working toward an art degree, and desperate enough for internship hours that I agreed to run a studio in Pearl River, Mississippi, almost entirely by myself. The studio belonged to Zenete Bellamy. Yes, that Zenete Bellamy. The celebrated Southern artist whose work had appeared in museums, private collections, and homes belonging to people rich enough to own decorative rooms nobody was allowed to sit in. She was 68, theatrical, and impossible to predict. Zenete wore embroidered robes over paint-stained clothes, stacked silver rings on every finger, and wore enough perfume to announce her arrival several minutes before she entered a room. She spoke with her entire body. Every sentence came with widened eyes, sweeping hands, or a palm pressed dramatically against her chest. Well, I assumed her eyes widened. She never removed her Chanel sunglasses. Not once. Zenete could have retired years ago, but she still owned a small gallery and studio on a quiet road right outside town. The front room displayed her personal work, paintings of swamps, cypress trees, and dark, stormy skies, alongside shelves of ceramic sculptures. Every sculpture included something human. A pitcher with fingers wrapped around its handle, a bowl resting on a row of tiny feet, a clay torso split open to reveal flowers growing where its ribs should have been, and faces. So many faces. Most of them had closed eyes. Zenete rarely worked the gallery herself. She said interacting with customers interfered with her creative frequency, which was a poetic way of saying she didn't like people. And in fairness, neither did I, but apparently my frequency was less important. The studio was open every day from 8 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon. Except for Thursdays. Thursdays were reserved for Zenete's private lessons. No one was allowed inside. Registration was confidential, and the students' names were never written in the appointment book, and Zenete wouldn't tell me who would attend. An artist must be free from observation, she told me. Not that I really cared. I knew her clientele. I assumed the lessons were for celebrities or wealthy collectors who didn't want anyone knowing they needed help making a lopsided ashtray. The job was easy most days. I unlocked the doors, answered emails, booked local artists for weekend events, and just sat behind the register trying to complete schoolwork without getting clay dust between my laptop keys. The only strange part was the returns. Zenete's pieces were expensive. Some cost several $1,000s, and people would wander through the gallery, fall in love with something unsettling, and carry it home. Then, days later, they would bring it back. They always looked terrible. There was a man who returned a ceramic hand after owning it for less than a week. The hand was life-sized, with long fingers curled, as though it were waiting for somebody to hold it. When he brought it in, he had dark circles beneath his eyes and a fresh bandage wrapped around his wrist. He placed the sculpture on the counter and said, "I don't want it in my house." I pointed to the sign beside the register. All sales are final. He stared at the hand for a few seconds before leaving without arguing. Another woman returned a clay bust she had purchased for her office. The bust had no mouth, only a smooth patch beneath its nose. The woman arrived barefoot, her blouse buttoned incorrectly and dried blood crusted on one nostril. She set the sculpture on the floor and whispered, "Keep it." I reminded her that we couldn't issue a refund. "I don't care about the money," she said. Then she walked out. My refund speech became polished. "I'm sorry, but all sales are final." I probably said it 50 times, and most people didn't argue. They just left the art behind. Sometimes Zenete would insist we restock the piece for resale. Sometimes she would take the piece to the back of the studio, and I would never see it again. Except for the woman with the vase. She came in on a Wednesday morning, minutes after I unlocked the door. She dragged an enormous black duffel bag behind her, the bottom scraping across the concrete floor. Her hair looked she had tried to brush it with her fingers and gave up halfway through. Her clothes were wrinkled and her eyes looked swollen from crying. She dropped the bag in front of the counter. Whatever was inside gave a sharp thud. "What game are you people playing?" she demanded. It was far too early for whatever this was. "Good morning to you too, ma'am," I said, shuffling through the event schedule for the upcoming weekend. She unzipped the bag. Inside was a vase she had purchased 2 days earlier. It stood more than 2 feet tall and had a burnished copper glaze. A man's face had been sculpted onto the front. His eyes were closed, and his mouth curved into a calm little smirk. He seemed to be sweetly sleeping. At least, that was how I remembered it. The vase had cost $9,000. "I want my money back," she said. I glanced at the sign on the counter, gesturing with my right hand towards it. She followed my eyes. "Don't point at that damn sign." I lowered my hand. She went on to tell me the first night she brought the vase home, she woke to the sound of laughter. Not ordinary laughter, deep, breathless laughter. The kind someone makes when they're trying desperately not to be heard. It came from directly outside her bedroom door, but she lived alone. She called the police and 2 officers searched the house. They found nothing and treated her with the careful politeness people use when they've decided you're unstable but don't want to say it out loud. After they left, she went downstairs, and there the vase sat in the center of her dining room table, right where she had placed it, filled with dried flowers. But its mouth was open, not smirking. Open wide enough that she could see the flower stems disappearing into its throat. I tried to interrupt what was clearly a mental and emotional breakdown, but she slammed both hands against the counter. "The eyes were still closed," she said. "So I told myself I remembered it wrong, right? The mouth must have been open when I bought it." The following night, she woke again. This time, something outside of her bedroom was gasping for air in slow, wet, desperate breaths. She opened the bedroom door, but the hallway was empty, and the sound became louder. It came from downstairs. She followed it into the dining room, and there was the vase just sitting on the table. Only it wasn't. At first she said it wasn't moving, not really. It was just expanding, barely, like clay remembering lungs. The sides swelled and contracted, while the sculpted mouth strained open, dragging in breaths that never seemed deep enough. As she stepped around the table, the vase's eyes snapped open and looked directly at her. The gasping stopped, and its mouth slowly returned to a smirk. Well, she locked herself in her bedroom until morning, and at 7:45 she shoved the vase into the duffel bag and drove straight to the studio. By the time she finished telling me, she was shaking. And I believed she believed it, but that is not the same as believing her. "I'm sorry," I said, "but I can't authorize refunds. It's the owner's policy." "I don't want this thing," she said through gritted teeth. "You can leave it, but I can't return the money." Her expression twisted. "If it belongs to me, I can do whatever I want with it." She grabbed the vase from the bag, and before I could react, she lifted it above her head and smashed it against the gallery floor. The sound echoed through the room. Copper-colored pieces scattered beneath the display shelves. The woman stared at the fragments, breathing hard. Then she turned and walked out. I stood behind the counter for just a moment. $9,000, I whispered. I searched in the supply closet for something to gather the broken pieces into. The supply closet is this damp little cellar in Zenette's private studio. Bags of clay line the bottom of each wall, and shelves are covered in different-sized wooden boxes. The boxes are beautiful cherry wood and covered in unique carvings, presumably art tools inside. I found a lone cardboard box and made my way back to the gallery to collect the pieces. On the west gallery wall, underneath a shelf of eerily realistic gnome sculptures, I found a large fragment of the vase that included the man's eyes. They were open. The expression on the face was no longer peaceful like I remembered. The brows had pulled upward. The eyes were wide, and the glaze around them was streaked as though the man had been crying. He looked terrified. I told myself I'd remembered the vase incorrectly. I had sold it only 2 days before, but I handled dozens of strange sculptures. Maybe the eyes had always been open. Maybe fear and exhaustion had made the woman see movement where there was none. Maybe the mouth had always been wide. Whatever the case, I still placed the fragment in the box, eyes down. Zenete arrived a few hours later that afternoon. I explained what happened and handed her the box. She listened silently, head tilted slightly to one side. When I finished, she carried the pieces toward the back studio. Just before disappearing through the door, she looked down into the box and sighed. "I knew you would be a problem," she said. I assumed she meant me. Zenete said things like that. She was an eccentric artist. Eccentric artists were allowed to be insulting as long as they wore enough gaudy jewelry. Friday morning, I returned to the gallery for the weekly deep cleaning. The studio's rear bay door was raised, which usually meant that Zenete was firing the kiln. As I walked up to the bay door, I saw the kiln. It was stationed right next to the bay opening, and I realized that its orange lights were dark. Water covered the concrete floor, not a puddle, but a thin sheet stretched from the kiln to the long oak work table in the center of the room. As I stepped inside, I noticed footprints in the wet clay. Bare feet. They all led toward the kiln, but none led away. Zenete emerged from the supply closet and clapped her hands. "Slayed! Perfect timing." I asked about the water. "Creative spillover," she said. That explained nothing, but Zenete had never allowed facts to interfere with an answer. She told me she had begun cleaning early because she needed my help completing her newest sculpture, her largest piece yet. A bowl. I should have been suspicious, but instead I was thrilled. A collaboration with Zenete Bellamy. This could change my career. It could lead to gallery representation, recommendations, maybe even graduate school. I cleaned faster than I ever had in my life that day. I was attentive to every inch of that gallery. I cleaned each piece just as she had taught me, gently and with respect. At 4:30, Zenete locked the front door and lowered the bay door. The studio became sealed and silent. She explained to me that that's the only way she could truly focus on her craft. The silence didn't last very long, though. She grabbed a Bluetooth speaker from beneath the front desk counter and began playing smooth jazz music as loud as she could. She switched on the overhead lights of the back studio, and bright white light flooded the room, flattening every shadow. A massive clay bowl sat in the center of the oak table. It was beautifully hand-shaped. Zenete could make with her bare hands what most artists struggled to achieve on a wheel. The bowl's surface was covered in shallow hollows, 6 of them to be specific. They swirled around the clay in almost overlapping patterns, some sinking into each other, though the surface seemed to be slowly melting. "What goes in those?" I asked. Zenete smiled. "Every masterpiece knows exactly what it's missing." She disappeared into the supply closet and returned carrying one of the many cherrywood boxes. This particular box was carved with flowers, mouths, and tiny grasping hands. She sat it on the table. "Art requires intimacy, Slade," she said. "Does it require overtime, though, because technically I clocked out." She laughed a little too loudly at my joke. "You hide behind humor," Zenete said. "I used to do that, too." She opened the box and something rolled softly against the wood. Marbles, I thought. 4 unusually large marbles. 2 of them blue. 2 were green. One of the pupils dilated. I stepped backward. "Zenete?" She reached into the box and lifted a green eye between her fingers. It glistened beneath the studio lights. "Do you know why people remember my work?" she asked. Like I could genuinely give an answer. I couldn't speak. "Clay remembers," she continued. "Stone remembers. Wood remembers. Artists have been wasting that gift for centuries." She pressed the eye into one of the clay's empty hollows. It moved within its new socket. Its pupil rolled toward me. "Real art remembers people, Slade," Zenete said. "Nope," is what I meant to say, but all that could come out of my mouth at that moment was, "Nah," and I ran. I sprinted through the gallery and grabbed the front door. Locked. I twisted the deadbolt, but it wouldn't move. The door was thick glass, coated in black tint. No one outside could see me. I pounded against it. "Slade," Zenete called. "Don't embarrass yourself, darling." I kicked the door. The glass didn't crack. Wasn't glass supposed to crack when you hit it? She entered the gallery carrying the bowl. Its single eye followed me. "You want to become a true artist," she said. "True artists commit themselves to their craft." "Immediately no," I squeaked out. "You're insane." "No," she smiled. "I am successful." Then she removed her sunglasses. There were no human eyes beneath them, no whites, no veins, no soft tissue. In their place were two ornate ceramic eyes, each made from dozens of colors swirling together beneath a glossy glaze. They shifted inside her skull with a faint scraping sound. That was when I heard them. The crying, the laughter, the whispering, a wet gasp for air. The faces sculpted into the pottery were moving, mouths opened and shut, eyelids fluttered, ceramic fingers clawed against shelves, tiny clay legs kicked helplessly beneath bowls and plates. On the floor, a pitcher dragged itself forward using human hands molded into its sides. The mouthless bust trembled. A muffled scream pressed from beneath the smooth clay covering its lips. "You can have everything you want," Zenete told me. "Recognition, wealth, immortality." The bowl blinked. The eye watched me from its unfinished surface. "You can become part of something greater." I turned back to the door and screamed. I lifted my arms to strike the glass again, and everything went dark. "You're doing it wrong." Zenete's voice drifted through the blackness. "You must be gentle." I tried to move. I couldn't feel my arms, though, or my legs, or my lungs. Why couldn't I breathe? "Spray the solution onto the cloth," she continued, "never directly onto the piece." A soft fabric passed over me. Gentle pressure. "You're using too much force." I wanted to open my eyes so badly, and everything faded to black again. When I came to, the gallery was filled with noise, crying, whimpering, laughter that shook without breath. My vision came slowly as I struggled to open my eyes. I was in the center of the front room gallery, on a tall pedestal, beneath a glass case. I tried to turn my head, but instead my vision shifted in dozens of directions at once. I saw the ceiling, the floor, the front door, Zenete standing beside me with a cloth in her hand. I looked down. I had no body. I was the bowl. Eyes covered my surface, melting into one another and spiraling around the clay. Two were blue, two were green, belonging to some other fortunate stranger. And among them were eyes of deep brown, mine. All around the gallery, the sculptures moved inside their cases. Some watched me, some wept. I tried to scream, but my mouth didn't exist. I tried to close my eyes, but I couldn't. Zenete stepped back and admired her work. "Almost perfect," she said. Then the front door chimed. The customer entered the gallery. She stopped in front of my pedestal and stared. "Oh," she whispered, "this is beautiful." Zenete smiled. "Would you like to take it home?" I forced every eye toward the woman. I tried to warn her, pleading for her to run, But the woman only leaned closer to the glass, and she smiled. Zenete lifted the glass case around me, or is it us? She carried us to the front counter, setting us down gently on a stack of cheesecloth. Zenete motioned to the little white sign beside the register before wrapping us in the cloth. All sales are final.